Giulianti and Michael Stouter are both unopposed, but they have a hearing next door, and I think it'd be good for everybody involved that they make it over there. So first of all, I'm going by tonight, by the way, by the ballot, the specimen ballot I have. So tonight, we'll have first Dan Giulianti come up.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry for my informal attire. It's a beautiful summer night. Thanks, Claudia and the council, for inviting us here again tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to stand up here and speak to you all. As John said, my name is Dan Giulianti. I'm the current select board chair. I'm just finishing up my first 3-year term and running unopposed for another 3-year term. I've learned a lot in my 3 years on the board, and I'm very involved in other committees as well. I'm chair of the Town Center Committee, who has been charged by the select board to evaluate designs and funding sources for a future town center reconstruction. We submitted a survey out to the town residents, had an incredible response. Many of you probably responded to that. I'm also on the building committee for the senior center, as many of you know, and I think my construction background, I'm vice president of T. Ford Company of Georgetown, Mass, has greatly aided me in my contributions to the committee. Additionally, I'm also part of the QRSD task force. That was formed when Hubbardston got together with all the other Quabbin 5 towns and formally asked the schools for a 5-year financial plan. We took the lead and said, we need a plan. We can't plan, give us a 5-year plan. They were not able to do that. So they formed this task force, for which we now all working together to figure out how to make this thing work, as state funding continues to be severely lacking and we have significant declining enrollment projected over the next decade or two. Personally, I have 2 daughters, Addison and Avery, ages 8 and 10, both at Hubbardston Center School, and my wife Tara and I have lived in town for 14 years. We've coached many years of different youth sports, all the way from the 3-year-olds up till what we're doing now, which we're both Massachusetts club soccer coaches for the 10 and 11-year-olds, and that pretty much takes up the balance of our free time. Again, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words tonight. Sure. So it's constantly changing. As of several hours ago, an hour ago, we got some good news. So there's the grant, $497,765, plus a couple additional funding efforts that had been done by the town over the last few years. So there's a certain pool of money that's able to be used for the senior center. So not to go into every detail, but basically we've had I think 18 or 19 building committee meetings so far in a short period of time. We work very hard at it and care about it. And where things stood is that we had to put a site work package out, which involved tree clearing, it involved access road construction, most specifically to get to where the well was going to be, way out back. And late in the game, when we were going for our final permits there, we found out through a DEP agency that there was an issue with where we were going to be siting the well based on ownership of land. A lot of technical terms that I don't understand them all either, but it had to do with things that we thought were already figured out before my time, but other members of the committee thought had been figured out. Apparently, the right people weren't asked, or some people who thought they were in a position to give an affirmative answer on things gave that and shouldn't have. However, as of an hour ago, the right person, who was a little bit miffed that we didn't speak to her in the first place, sent us a fairly long email with a couple of slaps on the wrist, but said, we're going to be able to make this work without an extensive time period. Basically, it has to do with getting an easement or a memorandum of understanding. An easement can take years. A memorandum of understanding can take a couple of lawyers going back and forth with terminology. So that's where it stands, and that's literally hot off the presses. So I don't want to say I know too much about it, but that's just basically as big of an update as I can get. So there was also a septic issue that was related to wetlands in town. That was another piece of this. Again, recently, I think last Friday, we decided to not have any wetlands issues. We decided to move where the septic system was going to be. That's back closer up to Route 68. They did a preliminary perk test. The gravel was fantastic. Water flew right through it. And we're going to be doing a more formal one to get the approval of the revised septic design. So a couple of significant issues, obviously, in the early work, and they're being figured out right now. So, good enough?
Can I add something to that, Dan?
No
Yes.
more rumors?
So the grant is use it or lose it, and we only have really till the end of the month to have the money committed. So we didn't want to turn back $500,000 to the state because we'll never see that again, ever. So all this work that Dan's talking about doing is preliminary work that even if the senior center doesn't get approved for 5 years, which I hope isn't the case, this work won't be for naught. A well will still be there, an access road will still be there that can be used eventually, that we're using state funds for, which is our funds that went to Beacon Hill and now coming back. So we're trying to use it up on things that won't go bad, planning for the future.
Right, the term we use is non-degradable items. So items that, a well, it's going to be a well. I mean, 100 years from now it won't, but we're not talking crazy like that. So, okay.
Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Stouter, and I'm running for another 3-year term on the Board of Selectmen. This would be my 3rd term. I first want to thank the Council of Aging for planning an event. This is great to have all the candidates out and an opportunity to speak here. I look forward to continuing my track record of professionalism and common sense leadership. I'm proud of our accomplishments over the last few years. We've improved our financial management and procedures, things that aren't very noticeable or very sexy to look at, but it's been a huge thing that we've done over the last 3 years to make the town better and more secure. We started a roads program beginning with a $2 million reconstruction of 3 years ago, and we have a plan for the next 5 years of trying to repair the roads that have been desperately neglected for decades here. We started with this year we're starting with a reconstruction of Old Westminster Road. It's going to cost just south of $1 million. The town was able to secure a grant for that from the state. We recently reconstructed Burnshirt Road and replaced the Healdville Road Bridge. I also look forward in the next term to make the senior center build successful and start planning for a new public safety building. Obviously, we all know the infrastructure in town is not adequate anymore. It's outlived its lifespan, and we need to improve that, which we will. We also have the opportunity to reimagine Main Street over the next few years as the state comes through and redoes Route 68. These projects will prepare Hubbardston for the future. I continue to support fiscal discipline, but we also have to remember to continue to prepare and anticipate for the future. We can't be stuck in the past. I also would like to plan over the next few years to think about how to bring other businesses to Hubbardston. As Hubbardston is largely a residential community, budget and financial issues fall on all of our shoulders. Increasing our commercial base will help alleviate this tax burden. But we're a rural town, we're a quiet town, we have no sewer, no water, so this really limits what kind of business we can bring in. So we need to find some that fit well with the character of our town and what we want our town to be. We have already seen the construction of solar fields, with 2 more coming online hopefully this year, and those do bring added revenue to the town, which is great, and they're quiet and doesn't impact the need for sewer, water, or anything. Outside of my term on the Board of Selectmen, I'm a cardiologist. I work predominantly at Haywood Hospital, but also work at UMass Memorial. I've lived in Hubbardston since 2004. My wife and 3 daughters are active in the school, community events, and the town sports. And I just want to say thank you for listening, and I look forward to your support on Election Day. Thank you.
I do have a question, because you brought up something that I've been kind of wondering about. 3 years ago, we were told Route 68 was going to be done north and south of Main Street, and then nothing, and then nothing, and more nothing. Is the state actually going to do it, or is that just so much hot air coming out of the State House?
Well, it's a little bit of both, probably, but the state gave us notice several years ago that they were going to do 68, and for them to do 68, we needed to do engineering for it. We have to supply the state with engineering for them to do the work. It was fairly simple engineering because all they're doing is ripping up and putting down 68 all over again. So a couple years ago, the town approved the money for engineering, and that was put on the list to do, and then they bumped it to the next. Do you remember? It was supposed to be like before 2017.
Yep.
Now it's like in the 18 to 2020 time frame as they bumped it. So it's still on the list. It's still an important project for them, but other projects came up that they deem more important than redoing 68.
Well,
so
can I add to that too?
Go, absolutely.
So while they were the south section was the one they were going to do first. That was on the TIP program, Transportation Improvement Project list. So they were going to do that first, and our surveyors went out there, they started designing it, and found out that there was
That's right.
incorrect survey from like 1956. Unfortunately, that was going to cause a time frame delay, because it had to go through additional permitting, it had to go through different departments in the state, that they basically, the reason it got kicked to the next TIP program, 2019 or 20 or whatever, was because they knew that that was going to take time, so they said, no, Hubbardston South,
That's right.
you're out.
That's
For
right.
now, not forever, and we're figuring out that stuff as we go along, but that's the real reason why it got bumped as well.
It had to do with easements that the DCR had on land that weren't recorded correctly, again, 50, 60 years ago, so they have to figure all that out before they come and do it again. But, no, they're still planning on doing it, and with that, comes the Main Street section. So if we just leave it be, all they're going to do is resurface the road and leave it alone, and we all know that the sidewalks are in bad shape, and the school, people drop off at school, you're right in the middle of the road, so it gives us the opportunity, and that's why we have a town center committee, to look at and see what can we, when the state comes through, what can we add to it with curbing or sidewalks or whatever people want downtown to just make it look a little better and make it a little more functional and practical. You don't have kids walking on the middle of 68 and Halloween and things like that.
Would they pay for that, the sidewalks and that?
Well, no, they won't. I mean, we may be able to go get grants for it or whatever, but any kind of work like adding sidewalks or curbing, that they would do the work as they come through and do it, but the town would be responsible for doing that. They're coming through simply to repave the road. But
So we had a meeting the other night, Town Center Committee, last Thursday, I think. We had representatives from the town of Westminster who did a massive center reconstruction plan, actually hired a town planner who now works for them full-time, who's been there for 2 years. Theirs is a little different because they have a state road, it's Route 2A, so ours is much easier to deal with than theirs. They came in, they presented to us for maybe an hour and a half, gave us some excellent ideas on funding, contacts at MRPC, CDBG grant potential, so there's all of that is pretty much, besides actually getting something done to get to a point where we can have some sort of schematic design to present to the town to actually see, we're actually, number 2 or 1A is how do we pay for it?
Then are we going to spike this same gun for 68 North and find out what easements there are that aren't going, so that perhaps 68 North won't take an extra 5 years?
Well, 68, and correct me if I'm wrong, 68 was split into 2 sections, south
That's what
and
I said.
north. I don't think the north is on the tips list currently.
Nah, it might
Is
be.
it?
It might be.
was originally.
No, I think it is. And I think, to answer your question, I believe the design is done and there were no issues on the north.
Yeah, it was,
Okay.
the south part has all of the DCR land by now, Comet Pond. That's where it was all affected, down in that DCR section over there.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Yes.
So during your 9-year term, we've had the whole incident with the tax collector, which certainly impacted the fiscal ability of the town to pay its way. When I read the new inner report, or the warrant for our town meeting, I see that the head of the chair of our finance committee says that we are in dire straits. Could you please address what's going on and where you think we can do and what we can do without going to a Prop 2.5, and which of course goes right to the next meeting?
So I will respectfully disagree with the Finance Committee. We are not in dire straits at all.
I served in the finance
Yes.
committee, and I'm privy to what they did. I also served on capital planning, and I totally agree with Susan as to where we are, respectively.
Okay, so the Prop 2.5 override is something that the school district has requested. I can tell you that the Board of Selectmen doesn't support it at all, because it's a ban.
I'm not talking about the Prop 2.5. I'm talking about the general, where we are in essence, as like if we were a family, where we are going, not a particular issue, but what's going on between what's happened recently with the tremendous loss through basically thievery, and where we are going through what we're going, and now you're proposing additional spending. So I just want to know where we're going.
We have to be careful with spending. We don't have a lot of room to spare in our budget. Again, we're a small town with a small budget, but with that comes the need to spend money to have services. I mean, we have police, we have a fire department, we need to plow our roads, we need to buy salt, we need to put the lights on. So that all costs money. With that, we also have to have capital purchases. So, police cars wear out, plows wear out over time. We have to be smart with our purchases, and certainly I don't think that anything has been purchased without a lot of thought. In fact, we've taken things off the list. So we do have to be careful with that. One of the things this year that has impacted our budget a little bit is we actually have better budgeting this year because capital purchases for many years in this town were a warrant article. Think back to other articles where there would be one warrant article with capital purchases, new and old, that were used for free cash. So we used free cash to purchase them. This year, we brought them into the budget as part of our operating expense. So we had to bring in, we had to supplement our operating budget with free cash, which is usually a big no-no. In essence, we were doing it anyway before because it was brought out of the budget in a separate article. So we are using more free cash. We actually are using free cash this year when the previous years we did not. Those capital purchases that are being paid for by free cash are dropping off now as the years come on over the next basically 3 to 4 fiscal years. The big fire truck that was bought 10 years ago or 8 years ago is coming off. That's a huge payment. So there's a plow truck that's coming off. As those come off, that's going to get rid of the free cash supplement to the town. We otherwise have everything paid for within our budget and levy.
Can I just add something to
Come
my...
on, you're talking about, now we've gotten rid of the fire truck payments, but that leaves us with no fire truck, which means we have to engage more money to buy a new fire truck.
No.
Excuse me, where's the fire truck going to come from?
No, the fire truck's already there. It's the projected 30-year life. It was a 10-year payment. Just like you have a car, you pay off the car over 5 years. You don't get rid of it the second the payment's done.
So the fire department is not asking for a new fire truck?
No. They're asking for an ambulance, but they're not asking for a fire truck.
Well, that's not what I was presented to me when I was.
Can I add something too? I know, Peter, you didn't specifically want to talk, or weren't specifically meaning to talk about the override, but it has to be stated out loud that 60% of our budget is the schools. And they had a $1.75 million increase in special...
Thank you, Dan. That's what I'd like to start.
In $1.75 million increase in special ed that they don't get any money back from, that the towns just have to absorb. So they work school committee-wise to put together their budgets in whatever way they're going to, and then they come to the town. And if it goes in that direction further, Monty Tech, we happen to have, congratulations to the town kids, like 9 graduates for Monty Tech this year, or no, 9 kids who are going to go into Monty Tech this year. That's another $100,000 to our budget. We had no idea. So, because they get accepted, so you never...
900,000.
No. 9 kids, 100,000.
100,000 total. So it's 100. I mean, it was 93 grand, something like that. It's significant for us. So those 2 school issues made it so incredibly difficult. So it's a tough one to answer, and I hate to just blame that but it's.
I'm not looking for blame. I'm looking for explanation, and that's what we're here for,
Right.
is to talk about what's going on.
So the major budget drivers this year, I mean, again, I'm going to sort of take those capital things out because they were always there. We're just accounting for them differently now. But the major budget drivers this year in our budget was the school. Was Monty Tech was number one, with a $100,000 increase from Monty Tech, and the second one, we gave Quabbin Regional District 6% over what they did last year. So we gave them 6% more. We could only raise taxes by 2.5% every year. So every time we have to give them 6%. Something else has to give somewhere else. So as school costs go up, we have to chip away at other things. And that's not unique to Hubbardston. That's every single town around with a school district. I want a strong school district as much as everybody else. I have kids in the school district. But at the same time, you can't go from 60% to 65 to 70% of our budget as the schools. That's where the Quabbin Task Force comes in, that they're looking to see what can we do in the school district to alleviate this, because in the Quabbin district, it's not just us, it's all the other towns are having the same issue. You look at Wachusett, they're having all the same issues in the Wachusett district, so it's not just us. There is no easy answer for it, and the Quabbin Task Force is looking at all kind of things, whether it be school closures over the time to eliminate some of the cost. That right now, there's no answer there, but the towns and the district are working together to try to figure out a way to rein in school costs so that it becomes more affordable for the towns.
So this task force, which is, as I stated before when I was up there, which I'm part of, we were able to convince, again, all 5 towns, not just to write that initial letter that said a 5-year plan, but then to come together as a task force and go back to our select boards to come together and sign community compact agreements, all with education as the focus. When you do that, it's a new program in January of 2015 that was implemented by the Baker administration, to be able to come with an agreement with the state to get money to help figure out how to make things more streamlined. So it could be for police, it could be for fire, it could be conservation, but we all chose education. We all modified what our original requests, if they were for any, got together, went to the state with it, and they gave us $70,000 and said, you're going to be our pilot project. We are very excited that you guys got together. Nowhere else in the state has a group of towns gotten together to try to work together to do this. So I'm actually, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., I'm signing this community compact because Hubbardston's taking the lead on behalf of Hubbardston with Lieutenant Governor Polito in Ocam to move that process forward.
So our budget is completely covered within tax revenue. We don't need an operating override to support our budget. Now, if the school districts all pass the budget, which we all know historically doesn't happen, but if every school district passes the budget and then Hubbardston gets hit with another almost $300,000, yeah, I think then we would have to look at some major cuts in our budget. However, looking back through all the years of history in the school district, we're the ones, and us and Barry typically are the ones that have always supported the budget, and the other towns can't. And now if we can, I can guarantee you that some of the smaller towns in our district also cannot. So I think the likelihood of that happening is extremely low. The override for the school district also is a Band-Aid. It's not a permanent fix. It's going to give them $300,000 more this year, and then next year they're going to need another $300,000 more than we can afford to give them. So it's a perpetuating cycle, which is where this community compact, Quabbin Task Force comes in, is how do we fix it? How do we structurally fix the Quabbin district? I know you want to say more. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to say anything more. I just think you've gotten off my question, which was generally what the town, I mean, you've gone down.
Oh, so what? So
I did that on purpose.
No,
yes, no. So,
that's fine, Mike.
but I want to answer your question. What is your question?
You answered. You believe me.
If
you and Dan definitely. That was a conversation I was trying to engender, was to give people an idea of what the finances of the town are. Certainly and definitely the school budget is the biggest part of it, and the fact that you're working on it, I think, is great. And certainly, but I mean, you're talking about taking care of Main Street and all these other projects, and indeed, I mean, certainly the elephant in the room is the proposed development down here on 68 and New Templeton Road, and you're proposing that, and then all I'm asking is that, can we make our own budget? Can we even make our own payments, given the restrictions on what we have to pay for schooling? And now you're asking us to pay even more money to do these other projects. I'm not commenting on the necessity or the quality or the whatever of the new projects. I'm just saying that, I'm just trying to be practical here. And, do we have the money? You're saying no. You just said to me, no, we don't have to do an override to make our basic payments. That's great. But, so that's fine. That's all I really wanted to know. You guys answered my question. Thank you very much.
So do we have the money in our operating budget to fund the construction of a senior center?
I didn't
No.
ask that question.
We do not.
I did not ask that question.
Do we have it
And
to-
I'm really not interested in your promotion as to whether.
I'm not trying to promote it. I'm answering your question. Do we have the money in the budget to build that? The answer is no. Do we have the money, if it was built, to support the operation of it? Absolutely we do. Do we have the money to build a public safety building within our budget? We do not. Do we have the money to support it if it was built with maintenance and everything else? We do. Because again, that's money we're spending at other places that is going to be brought back in that can afford that. Do we have the money to afford, as the budget stands, if the Quabbin comes back and says we have to have that other $300,000, that's what the state said you have to give. We do not. We would have to do major cuts in the other departments, as would, I can guarantee you, the other 4 towns in the department, in the district.
I just want to make a point on the remarks by Dan and Dr. Stouter about the problems we had and the rumors that have been going around. Actually, it's turned out to be a good thing because we've moved the senior center closer to the road. We've changed the location of the well, moved it closer to the senior center. The septic system is being moved closer so that construction costs are going to be reduced for that particular portion of it, so that's a good thing. So out of bad times comes good news, and that's the good news, that we'll be saving some money there. I think you've all recognized Senator Ann Goby, our senator.
Thank you, John, and it's nice to be here. When Peter was asking the questions about things with the schools, and Dan, and I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10, and I sat in on one of those task force meetings, and I can tell you that extremely important, you're exactly right, because a lot of the issues that this regional school district faces. You know, there are 58 regional school districts in the state. 171 communities are part of those 58 regional school districts. I was very pleased in the Senate budget last week to be able to $2 million extra for regional school transportation, which directly comes back for the communities and does help. So hopefully that will stay within the conference committee, and that'll come up to about 73% reimbursement. So it does help. Every little bit helps. But with the task force that Dan was talking about, I sat in on one of the meetings that they had. Maureen Marshall had invited me to come to hear about some of the things that were planned. And I am so glad, because as you mentioned, the Polito and Baker administration really grabbed onto that, because they know that those are issues that face every single regional school district. I have 11 regional school districts in this 28-town Senate district. So regional schools are always a priority for me. You getting this, Bill? I know that you're trying to tape it at the same time. I'll try to look at you a little bit more. So extremely, extremely important. One of the things that we also did during the Senate debate last week and part of the Senate budget is to expand that, what you're doing on this kind of local level with the task force, to expand that statewide, and so that we would have a larger task force specifically looking at regional school issues. Give you an example, right? When you're talking about maybe closing down a school, I know that it's come up that perhaps New Braintree has not many kids in that New Braintree school, and if that was going to close, it may or may not. But at the same time that we're thinking of maybe closing a school here, we're building a brand new one in Templeton. And so, you know, you start thinking about, does this all make sense when you have these school districts so close to each other? And, you know, does it make sense to do that? Should we be building a brand new one? And of course, for the town of Templeton, they've been waiting a long time, and they want that elementary school, and I don't blame them. But I think we have to start looking at what we're going to do with regional schools in a bigger area, and I know that that's a big part of what that task force is going to do. I'm not sure if you just wanted to ask questions or how you wanted to do this, but first of all, I want to say thank you for having me here. It's always good to come to Hubbardston. My mom's had a lot of health issues the past few months, so I haven't made as many trips here as I would have liked, but she's on the upswing, and so we'll get her back out here with me too, because she likes coming and enjoying all the good things that happen here at the Hubbardston Senior Center. And it'll happen, Claudia. It'll happen one of these days. I know that it will. A couple other things. One of the big areas that I've been involved in, obviously, is in farming. I've had the good fortune for being the Senate chair for the last couple of years for the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture Committee. We put out a major piece of legislation out of the Senate a few weeks back for agriculture. And a lot of it is really trying to get local agriculture back going again. We see right now in Worcester County that we have the most direct sales, believe it or not. We're like 5th in the nation for Worcester County for direct sales in farm goods. And a lot of people wouldn't think that. But there's a lot of good things that are happening. I mean, you go, you know, what Tom does up at his place, what you're doing up at your area. We've got lots of, you know, what Joyce is doing, and all the local farms that are in the area. So we tried to do a little bit more for that. We also did my amendment for another $300,000 for Buy Local campaign, also was adopted in the Senate budget. Again, the idea is to really help with local agriculture. I've also had the good fortune this past couple of years of being the vice chair for the Veterans Committee. And obviously over this past weekend, I had an opportunity to attend 15 different veterans events, which was fantastic. One of the things that we're trying to do, which is centered around housing for veterans. It's really kind of sad to think that right now, if you live in a community where there is not senior housing in your community, if you're a veteran, you're supposed to get preference for senior housing. But if your town doesn't have senior housing, you get no preference, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So we're changing that. We have a bill that's coming out. It's already passed the House. It'll be coming into the Senate next week. And it will allow any veteran, no matter where they live, even if they live in a community that does not have a housing authority, that they would be able to get on a list in another community, and they would go to the front of that list. So we're trying to do things like that to help, obviously, veterans. I did want to say, too, a special thank you. This district, with the horrendous and senseless killing of Officer Tarantino a little over a week ago. As many of you know, Tricia, his wife, teaches at Ruggles Lane. And the way that the community, that those kids and this school district came out in support of her, you should be extremely proud of what you have done in your communities, and especially proud of the kids in these schools, because it was unbelievable, the outpouring of support that they have come out with for her. So I'll be happy to take some questions. You don't want to hear me just rattle on, but if anyone has a question, I'll be happy to answer anything. Hi, Tom.
Hi. I just checked before I came over here.
Yep.
The school budget has been cut by the state 12% year over year. I mean, the schools are having trouble anyways, but they keep cutting the budget. What happens if the Senate passes this thing and the governor vetoes it? Are they going to override it?
I would hope so. I would hope so. And I would hope that the governor, we've had some discussions about regional school transportation. A couple of years back, when things were not good with the budget, he was able to use 9C cuts, and Deval Patrick did the same thing. And one of the things that they cut was regional school transportation. If you remember, how we had to scramble to try to get that money put back in to take care of regional school transportation. And as far as you're saying about being cut, what happens is just what you were talking about a few minutes ago. The costs continue to go up. So even when we put more money in, and even more money into local aid, the costs do continue to go up. And so, yes, overall, there's not as much money as there was maybe 10 years ago. But it's slowly getting back.
Well, the budget keeps going up, obviously.
Yes.
And the amount the state keeps giving us keeps going down.
Yeah, and no, go ahead.
6 years ago, we were 62%.
Yep.
And now we're 51%. And that budget keeps going up. The state legislature doesn't seem to want to do anything to rectify that.
Yeah, and I think
it's very frustrating.
Yep.
We have a Democratic Senate and House, veto-proof, they can do whatever they want, and they just seem to want to keep cutting. And the children, they take it out on the children. And when we regionalized, I remember I was here for the vote. They said, Quabbin, if you regionalize, we will pay 100% of your busing costs. I mean, a lot of the older people remember that, and they don't do it.
Yeah, it's in the, and you're right, it's in statute, and it says, but the 3 words, subject to appropriation. Those are the 3 magic words, unfortunately, that go in with that. So yes, the promise was made, and that was, the very first regional school district in the state was the Wachusett district. It was Senator Maha from Orange, when he was the senator, that started this idea about regional schools. And that was the carrot, absolutely, that you would get, subject to appropriation, 100% reimbursement. And so hoping, as I mentioned, that we'll get up to at least 73%. Every year we're trying to get it back up, to put more in. And one of the issues, Tom, I know you mentioned about Democratic control, but one of the issues that we really face, it's not Democrat and Republican, it's East and West, because the regional schools are this way. They're not that way. They're not East. And that's one of the problems that we run into. Even though 58 regional schools, 171 communities, more than half the communities in the state are part of it, but Boston isn't regionalized, the big cities aren't regionalized. And that's one of the issues that we deal with in trying to get the funding.
Would you pledge not to vote for the budget unless they increase that?
No, I would not. I mean, the budget pays for veteran services, councils on aging. No, I would not vote against the budget, no. Yes?
Yeah, Mark Wiggler, I'm on the school committee.
Yeah.
And just a question, around the issue of special ed and the
Yes.
escalating costs in special ed, is there anything afoot at the state level to sort of give us some relief?
can't hear the question.
He was asking, Tom was asking if there's anything about, on the state level, on relief for special education costs. As you know, a lot of the things with special education are federally mandated. And yes, there is. And part of it was part of the Foundation Review Commission that has come out. If we were going to fully implement the Foundation Review Commission, it's about $2 billion. And part of that is to look at what we can do with special ed, and looking at specifically what we can do more in-house, and what services can be done within the schools themselves, so you're not having to pay for out-of-placement costs. That's not always possible, because there are some students, some kids, that their needs are so extreme that they could not be handled within the school district. But that is one area that definitely looking at, and again, and I wouldn't be surprised, I'm not sure, Dan, if that was part of the task force, but it might be, with the special ed and looking at ways to keep special ed in-house if possible.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah,
part
I
of it,
thought-
As far as how we can consolidate it within the district based on age and based on
Yeah.
what the level of efforts are, so no question about it.
Yeah.
So I have a question regarding
Yes.
special ed, and certainly, I don't want anybody to take this as I don't support kids getting special ed,
Sure.
but it's a real financial question. Maureen Marshall talked to us about special education and the cost, and, you know, the almost $2 million they have, and she was talking about children that have $400,000 placements for special ed, which include the transportation to a school, the schooling, and then back, and there's several of those children. So if it costs my daughter, if the school pays $12,500 to educate my daughter, where is the parity that one child is going to take $400,000 of resources from the school district when that can pay for a lot? And granted, again, I don't want anybody to take this as me not supporting kids getting special ed, but where do you stop? Where does the state say we're not going to force districts to pay a $500,000 placement for one child when that can educate, you know, a whole bunch of kids? And that was really an eye-opener when she was talking about these enormous placements for individual children. Is there anything at the state level to look at putting caps on that, or not allowing it, or putting some rules to it?
Unfortunately, on anything like that, that is federal mandates. And it would have to be changed on the federal level to try to do anything different with that. And like you said, yeah, it is unfortunate. We have kids in this district that attend the Perkins School for the Blind. I mean, there are certain, and it's expensive. It's expensive. And just as you said, I mean, you know in your own profession, people want the best. They want the best for their kids for health. They want the best for their kids for education. And, you know, when you're talking about some of the, and not to get off, but, you know, when you're talking about some of the parity issues, I mean, that's what happens with school choice. Some of the school choice issues, and then the ideas about charter schools and about the reimbursements that the towns get and what they have to pay out. You know, there's not much parity there either. Yes.
I, as a parent of a special needs person who is now 40, I was very involved with 766 and the whole 9 yards. In fact, I was Mother of the Year in Clinton when my kid was young. And it was my understanding that the state reimburses the towns for partial part of the education for these special needs children. And as a parent, I would say that most parents would love to keep their children in the school district if it was provided. There is not the provision for special needs children within the school system. There are not qualified people trying to teach them within. I had a grandson that every time he had an aide in the classroom, right? And this aide would stand in the back of the classroom where a special needs child needs somebody close on hand, not 50 feet away from them, to deal with them. My grandson was sent into the principal's office and spent most of his day in the principal's office not learning a blessed thing. So I say that if it was provided within your school's district right here, then a lot of parents would much prefer to have their children closer to home than bus somewhere. So, I mean, I think the school system falls short in that. And if you want to save yourself some money, provide the proper teachers, the proper equipment within the school, so you don't have to bus them out. No, I mean, I, as a parent, was my son's advocate. And believe me, you have to fight hard. I had him from one school to another school, to another school, to another school, and finally I said, that's it. I found a placement for my son, and that's where he went. But I tried everything with my own school system before I went that route. So, I mean, you have to look yourselves to see what you're providing within your own school district, that you don't have to bust these kids out to special schools. And if you provide that for them, a lot of parents would rather have their child closer to home. So, you have to look to yourself,
Yeah,
too.
and it's difficult to do that, depending on, I'm not sure, what sort of services that your son needed. And as you mentioned, I mean, there's some kids that just have such extraordinary
My son
needs.
was autistic.
Yeah,
very
okay.
severely autistic.
Yeah, well,
and he needed help.
Yeah, and autism and autism spectrum is like blowing off the charts now. And part of the budget, when you talk about things that happen and the budget keeps growing, part of it is that as well. We've added a lot for autism and autism spectrum. And of course, when things happen that you don't expect to happen. 5 years ago today was the tornado that ripped through central western Massachusetts. No one expected the millions of dollars that was going to cost. Millions and millions and millions. Still paying. And of course, FEMA on the Fed level, they would give back 75%, but the other 25% was supposed to be up to the towns. The state stepped up to the plate to make sure, because the communities, one of the towns I represent, the town of Munson, they weren't going to come up with $58 million. I mean, they don't have it. They didn't have it. So, sometimes extraordinary costs come up and things happen with a budget that you don't plan for. And what we're seeing with the opiate crisis right now, we're trying to put more beds online for folks. When we're having 5 deaths or more a day to the opiate, and it's you guys know, you know, it is absolutely everywhere. It's hit this town, it's hit every neighboring town, it's hit everywhere. And, we've put more money in the budget for that to try to deal with things. Again, not something that we planned for 3 or 4 years ago, but now, we need to address that. DCF, Children and Family, we've seen some of the horrible things that happen, putting more money in. And so there are things that happen with the budget. I know John's going to give me the look.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Claudia and the Council on Aging for hosting this event, and thank you all for coming. I'm Susan Rain. I've lived in Hubbardston since 1997, and I'm pleased to run for a seat on the Town of Hubbardston's Finance Committee. I seek a 3-year term. In August 2015, our town's Board of Selectmen appointed me to the Finance Committee. The committee members elected me as its chair in September. Since then, I have learned much about Hubbardston's finances, and among our many challenges, I believe we must first get a grip on our regionalized obligations. In 2016, over 60% of Hubbardston's operating budget went to education and dispatch. Yet we were blindsided by double-digit increases in our fiscal year 17 regional assessments. This baked-in dependency means that we have to stop being reactive and start being proactive in these relationships. We simply must do a better job if we are to remain in these partnerships. Let's start by looking more closely at Hubbardston's role in the Quabbin Regional School District. Quabbin is asking Hubbardston voters to approve a $280,000 plus override at this month's annual town meeting. I do not support the override because I do not think costs have been well managed. At the same time, I recognize our budget woes. School consolidation is an easy go-to solution for cost savings. But that solution merely shifts those costs onto the communities that lose the schools in terms of reduced property values and reputation. This is penny wise and pound foolish. We cannot just save our way out of this. We must also make smarter decisions regarding revenues and investments. Once our main budget drivers are managed, we can keep serving our community in more creative and effective ways. We can maintain and enhance Hubbardston's rural charm and simplicity while keeping up with the 21st century. These goals are not mutually exclusive. And financial opportunities and problems present themselves year-round, not just during budget season. If elected to the Finance Committee, I will work with our town's boards and officials throughout the year to meet our financial challenges. I have the interest, skills, ability, and time to serve on the Finance Committee. I'm an attorney with more than 30 years' experience in private practice. I love our town, and I want to preserve its rural character and appeal. That's why I live here. I enjoy the interaction of board and committee meetings as good people work together to solve problems. And in 2017, I will celebrate Hubbardston's 250th anniversary, as well as my 20th year of residence here and the 200th birthday of my home, the Reverend Samuel Gay House, on the National Register of Historic Places. So in conclusion, I thank you for your attention. I ask for your support and your vote, and I look forward to continuing my service. Thank you.
There are a few articles that are on the warrant for town meeting that do request additional monies. There's some fireworks, there's an ambulance, there's town center reconstruction. How do you feel about those items?
The recommendations that were made in the warrant by FinCom are my recommendations. I joined with the committee on that. There was no daylight among us, which was kind of nice. I did not support, and FinCom did not recommend the purchase of the ambulance. And the reason is, which I'll explain also at town meeting if someone asks, is because the town has not yet decided whether it's going to continue funding this ambulance service or outsource it. And until that decision is made, in FinCom's opinion, it makes no sense to buy anything. As soon as that decision is made, then I think it's proper to take a look at it.
Excuse me, and as far as the ambulance go, I just remind the townspeople here that it wasn't so many years ago that under a previous administrator, we were told that we would have this special fund that would finance the ambulance and that we'd be able to pay for it because the revenue from operating the ambulance would enhance the town, and now that's all of us, basically.
So could I add to that, Susan?
Sure.
No, well, you make a comment, not answer it. I didn't ask the question.
Do you want me to answer anything?
No, I don't care whether you do or not.
Okay.
Perhaps I could chip in a little bit on that. Ed Blanchard, 23 East Common Pond Road, former finance chair for about 5 years. When we first undertook the ambulance program, we also provided ambulance service for Barry. So between the revenues we got in the town of Hubbardston and in the town of Barry, we were able to make it an ongoing side business, and the revenues would cover all of our expenses. Barry determined that they would go and get their own ambulance, which they have done, and so now we lost all of the revenue from Barry, so that now basically the only revenue we have supporting our ambulance is in-town things. I think one opportunity we have is, does every town need 2 ambulances? They say they need an ambulance in case the first one's in for repairs or a breakdown or a bad accident. I think we have an excellent opportunity to regionalize some of this. If we all had one ambulance in our town to take care of most of the occurrences and had backup either with Woods Ambulance, which you can get a contract with in Gardner, or regionalized with Barry, and there's no sense in them having 2 ambulances and us having 2 ambulances. Maybe we should each have 1 ambulance and help each other out as we do in fire protection. So there's some alternatives that need to be looked at.
And I'm going to actually suggest that the ambulance never was self-supportive. Looking back, it was agreed to, long before I was involved in anything here. But I'm going to say it was probably never self-supportive. And I agree with Ed 100% that at the time when, we were covering Barry exclusively, you got a lot more revenue from insurance from that. But now it's covering Hubbardston and some mutual aid, as well as other towns cover us for mutual aid. So yeah, the revenue has come down, and insurance payments have gone down. We all know insurance payments, or at least I know, insurance payments for the medical field has gone down, which also includes ambulance services. So, but I'm going to suggest it probably was never 100% self-supportive, ever.
But I've got Jim Earhart, a candidate for state senate from Sturbridge, who's going to be up here next. All right, Jim.
I don't know if I need the microphone. Can you hear me without it? Yeah, I have a loud voice, and I'm a lawyer, so I tend to walk around the courtroom with my hands moving, so I'm going to do that. I'm running for the state senate. Ann Goby and I are going to be on the ballot in November. I have no opponent in the Republican primary, and Ann has no opponent in the Democratic primary, so the choice is clear. You vote for me or you vote for Ann. And what is that choice all about? I ran a couple of years ago, as I think many of you remember. I had a primary opponent, a friend of mine, and he ended up beating me, and then there was a tough election battle in November. So we're here this year to finish what we started. And the message that we talked about 2 years ago is the same message we're talking about today. Nothing's fundamentally changed. In essence, it's gotten worse, except that we have a Republican governor now who does have a clear policy of economic discipline and good governance. When the problems we're talking about, and I even said today, I found it fascinating. I was on the 10 task force school committee for 6 years. And it's one of my most memorable experiences because you really get enmeshed in the day-to-day activity of town government and what parents and schools go through. I was in the union negotiating committee. They put me on there to negotiate with unions and other labor entities. And I saw how every dollar does matter. Every dollar does play a role. And the one thing that tied us up was government regulation, government bureaucracy, the absolute waste that our town dollars went to, not because of our own fault, but because of state mandates. So how do you solve this? I mean, the state government can't solve local problems. What it can do is get out of the way and allow the local governments to solve the problems they do best through town meeting in meetings such as this. Now, the state government has a responsibility to provide baseline funding to these towns. But at the same time, let's remember, the money that goes to the state is money that you earned, your grandkids earned, your children earned, and they should be spending it themselves on their own families. And that's not happening right now. We talked about each individual item, from ambulances to school line items. Let's remember, this state budget grows every year. And over half that state budget doesn't go to schools, doesn't go to police, doesn't go to roads. It goes to state health care. We spend over 50 cents of every dollar on mass health and other government health programs. And that's fine. We need to make sure that everyone is covered for the medical needs. But the inefficiencies are shocking. We talk about trying to find money for your roads and your schools. You could find that money if our state legislature would take the time to fix Romney Care and bring some streamlining to our healthcare bureaucracy. And the only way that's going to happen is if there's a state senator who will stand arm in arm with Charlie Baker. Charlie Baker makes a proposal. Guess what? He has to get through Senate President Stanley Rosenberg and House Speaker DeLeo. House Speaker DeLeo and Stanley Rosenberg, particularly Mr. Rosenberg, are some of the most liberal members of the state legislature. If they don't want it to happen, it isn't going to happen. And the only way Charlie Baker is going to have an ally to make these changes so you have money for your roads, for your schools, is by having a state senator who can stand up and say, whoa, 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 whoa. I was in Hubbardston. I was in Templeton. I was in Sturbridge. We're going to spend $3 billion on this needless mandate for health care, but yet the people of these towns can't afford the basic needs. And unfortunately, Ann and I met each other a couple of years ago. I thought we got along pretty well. But Ann's voting for Stanley Rosenberg for Senate President. I am not. Charlie Baker has my ear, I will have his ear, because he knows he has an ally in the state Senate. That's where change begins. That's where you see a healthcare budget that is reduced by billions of dollars because of pure inefficiencies. And those dollars will go back to schools, roads, senior centers. Now the question may be, Mr. Earhart, if you're only one of the 6 Republicans in there right now, I'd be one of 7 out of 40. How can I get anything done? How can I advocate for my towns? You can advocate for your towns because they need me to stop fighting and stop complaining and stop whining. I can bet you, I saw it in the school committee, that when I advocate, Stanley Rosenberg would say, Mr. Earhart, what is it you want? What is it you need for your towns? And then I hear from our selectmen. I hear from our school committees. And we get deals done. And we solve your problems. But talk about this budget line item and asking you to cut this budget because of some government mandate isn't going to solve your problem. You solve your problem by stopping the government mandates. You solve your problems by finding efficiencies in state government. We have billions of dollars going nowhere but to waste. They should be coming back to these towns. It's not going to happen if we have a Democratic state senator who, in good faith, is voting with Boston and Cambridge every time. We need a state senator who's going to vote his conscience because he's not pushed by state party apparatus. We've seen these changes that can happen one step at a time. Remember, in this district, this is a big district, everyone, 28 towns, from the New Hampshire border all the way down to the Connecticut border. In those 28 towns, we have all Republican state representatives. All. Charlie Baker won this district by 16 percentage points. This is a district which has a certain value sense of economics and good governance. It flows through our towns and our rivers. And we have, over the years, changed our representation to be allied with a sense of fiscal discipline. And that local problems are solved by local people, not by state government. And the last remaining Republican missing piece is the state Senate. It was very close last time. My friend Mike Valenzuela lost by 398 votes. And Charlie Baker won by 16 percentage points. We're here today and going town to town to finish what we started. Because as me as a state senator, we have an allied bloc in the state Senate and the House. Donnie Berthiaume, Todd Smoller, Peter Durant, advocating for our towns with a Republican governor and a Republican administration which was elected on good governance and fiscal discipline. And Charlie Baker works very well with his Democratic legislature. He has to. But when you add another ally in that state Senate, the changes you seek, schools, roads, ambulances, that money will be there for you because it's not being wasted on something else. Ask yourself this. When Boston wants a new bridge, Boston wants a new line for the T, they get it. They get it. What are we doing? We're begging. We're begging for these things. And if you look at Senator Goby's record, you will find over her history, and she, as a state representative, time and time and time again, in all due respect, she voted right down the line for every tax increase that was put in front of her. The only tax increase she didn't vote for was last week's millionaire tax, and that was after I announced I was running for the state Senate. So change happens when you have an opposition. The first tax increase that Ann Goby voted against was after I announced for the state Senate. And why does that matter? It's not about Ann and me, it's about what's best for the district. We're talking broad issues, Boston, Cambridge, bridges, T. Because at the state Senate level, those things, we're talking billions of dollars. At this level, we're talking millions. When you cut billions at the state level, it flows down to the local level. So I'm a lawyer, I have 3 kids. Lily's 11, William's 9, Matthew's 6. I live in Sturbridge. I'm a lawyer, I'm a bankruptcy lawyer by trade. I dabble in some other things to keep my skills fresh after all these years, but I'm a bankruptcy lawyer, and what does that mean? My stock in trade is seeing people come to my office, many of them elderly, far too many of them elderly, who are trying to make ends meet, but they can't. Mortgage interests have gone up. Their escrow on their mortgages has gone up because the taxes have gone up because the state's taking the money from Boston. I am one person, indeed probably more than anyone else in that state Senate, I hope when I'm elected, who understands the daily struggles. Because I look at what's your food bill, what's your gas bill, what's your electric bill, to see if we can make it to the bankruptcy code and get you out of this thing. That's a perspective which is badly needed in the state Senate. And I think even Ann would admit I answer to nobody if I'm a state senator, except the people of these towns.
And the moderator.
And the moderator.
That's
Well,
okay.
as you say, you're increasing the opportunities through charter schools.
Yes.
Why are you pushing charter schools when they should be pushing the regular schools?
There's 2 issues there, and I don't want to take too much time because you can go on for hours about this. If you look when I talk about education, there's 2 things I talk about: Common Core and charter schools. Let me talk about Common Core quickly. What is Common Core? Common Core is a Bill Gates Foundation imposed federal regulation telling us how to educate our kids. On the school committee, I was a vigorous advocate against it. I will fight against it. Our current state senator voted for Common Core and continues to do so. And it matters because about federal regulations. If you talk to school committee members, where's our school committee? Right there. I was in Tantascwa. We spent weeks trying to find a way to get from A to B on the Common Core. Wasted funds for nothing. I have kids in the elementary schools in Sturbridge. They're getting worse education now than they did before. What works in Alabama doesn't necessarily work in Massachusetts because it shouldn't. So that's about just good governance. About charter schools, I'll be honest with you. I believe that a non-bureaucratic public school is a better public school. A public school which can run itself like a private business and use best practices, educates best and spends best. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they're not held back by regulation, they're by best practices. And the product of our public schools is our kids. If we're not educating well, we change. We educate the best way. And unfortunately, our public schools cannot reform and be flexible because of union strangleholds. The biggest problem, one of the biggest problems the public schools face is about creativity and changing, is the union stranglehold. I can bet you, we saw in the last election, over 50% of Ann Goby's campaign funding came from outside teachers' unions. It was all funding. The mailing came through MTA. Because when your campaign is paid for by teachers' unions, you have to answer to them. And that's the problem in the task force.
That's enough.
The charter school forces... Charter?
That's enough.
Does that answer your
You got it.
question?
You got it.
Next up is Jim Hannon, candidate for the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, my nickname is Jamie, but my official name is Richard Haddad, and I live on Lombard Road with my wife and 2 daughters who are the apple of my eye. I'm seeking a 1-year term on the Select Board. I've been on the Finance Committee for 2 years, and I've learned some of the issues that face the town, and I think this would help me transition to the Select Board if elected. I have a strong background in building and road construction and have been a member of the International Union of Operating Engineers for over 20 years, and I'm currently employed with J.H. Lynch from Millbury. If elected, I'd like to see the town move forward in the most positive way for all residents. I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight and giving me a chance to speak, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Election Day. Thank you.
Planning Board, Thomas Bradco.
Thank you. Last time I came up here, I was a little bit more prepared. I wasn't really prepared tonight, but I think it'd probably go a little bit better. It wasn't a very good speech anyways. I'm running unopposed on the Planning Board, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell people what we do at the Planning Board and tell a little bit about what we've got planned for this next year and what we've been doing. I was appointed, I think, in September or October to the Planning Board. I was appointed in September, around September for the Planning Board, and it's been a steep learning curve. I've lived in town 35 years. I've never been on the Planning Board before, but I've been involved in a lot of town politics. One of the big things we have coming up on the annual town meeting is we have a housing initiative that we're asking to $50,000 from CPA funds to be able to offer first-time home buyers a deposit or a part of a deposit to be able to buy a house, as long as they give us a deed restriction to make that house affordable. And hopefully it'll do 2 things. It'll be able to create some affordable housing for people in town and help out some young people that have tremendous college debt. And the amount of money, for this, if you want to know what an affordable house is, in Hubbardston, it's about $200,000 for a 3-bedroom house. And the salary that a family of 4 would be able to do, qualify would be about $80,000. So this is a lot of school teachers, police, firemen. We're able to hopefully be able to create some housing stock for these people. But we're also, with that, we're also be able to renovate some, possibly renovate some of these properties. If we have with that $50,000, we might be able to buy a deed restriction on a property that's abandoned, and working with Habitat for Humanity, we'll be able to renovate that property, and then they'll help us find a family that want to move in town. So we want to be able to try to create affordable housing and bring new families in town. That's one of the big things we've been working on this year, and we did a housing plan this year. We were given $5,000 from, I forget where we got the money, but we've updated the housing plan, which has been a tremendous amount of work. There's 5 of us on the board, and we work like dogs. Kendall was saying, you know, how many hours do you and Vin and Tom and everyone put in on these things? We put literally hundreds of hours into this every month, and we do it because we love it. We really, really enjoy it, and that's why I wanted to run again. One of the other things we do is we approve A&R lots. If someone wants to subdivide their land, they have to come there. But basically what we do is when someone comes to the town with a planning, for a new building or some planning issue, we help interpret the zoning bylaws, and we try to enforce the zoning bylaws. And one of the big initiatives we had this year is, at least in the last probably 4 months, is trying to get these old gravel pits to conform and to try to reclaim those gravel pits so we don't have hazardous dirt and stuff, not hazardous dirt, but sand and stuff blowing in the wind like we have down in Pitcherville. So we're trying to bring these people that have these pits into compliance with our zoning bylaws.
Ken Daly.
Good evening, and thank you very much for allowing me to come up here and introduce myself. First, I want to apologize for my black fingers. And the fingernails, I helped a friend of mine paint an old black dump truck, and I hate painting. And I'm embarrassed. I got those clean, these are not. Anyways, I am on the planning board. I've been on there for, I believe, 5 months. Vinnie Ritchie is my neighbor. He asked me if I would be interested in filling in for someone who had left, and I said yes. And after working with Vinnie and Tom and the other 2 folks that are on it, I got hooked. And it is absolutely amazing, as Tom said, the number of hours that these people have put in. And my wife has actually said to me, oh my God, you're not out bike riding, you're actually reading something on the town? And I said, yes, I am. And I said, we should do something, I want to do something for the town. And when Vinnie first asked me to get on this, I thought, no, I'm not so sure. But I am very, very happy that he did. I have been educated extremely well by these gentlemen that I share this board with, and I hope that you will think about that and vote for me next week. Have any questions? Thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you for having us tonight. I am Catherine Hansgate. I live on Williamsville Road. I am co-owner and farmer at Ladybug Farm Produce on Williamsville. I am a candidate for an open slot in the Board of Health. I have lived in Hubbardston and been a certified organic farmer now for 5 years. I am been the chair of the Hubbardston Agricultural Commission for a little over 3 years. I am on the board of the Hubbardston Historical Society as well. I am married with 3 adult children and very happy with all of that. And it would be my honor to fill one of the voids on one of the committees in this town, the Board of Health. I have been a physical therapist for 32 years, up to the point that I started farming in Hubbardston. And so I have a little bit of medical background, and I'm certainly interested also in having a farmer on the Board of Health as we come into the new FSMA, which is the Food Safety Act from the federal government, and all its implications to farmers and citizens alike. And therefore, I became a candidate in Hubbardston. So I hope that you would take time to come out and vote and elect me as well. Thank you.
Next up is Mark Wiggler, Quabbin Regional School District Committee candidate.
Now that everybody has elicited all the problems or explained to me what all the problems of the school district are, I just have a few comments. It's going to be a challenging next couple of years, as Dan alluded to. And by the way, Dan is very active on the task force. I recently, my name is Mark Wiggler. I've been here, I'm a newcomer, 33 years. I live up on Cruz Road, and some people would say that I am a newcomer. I live with my wife, Mary Ellen Shaughnessy, and I had 2 children that attended the Quabbin Regional School District. Quite recently, I retired. It's like 8 months and 12 days ago or something, but you know, who's counting? And the fact of the matter is, in my other life, prior to actually having an expanded role on the school committee, because I am on the budget subcommittee, I actually ran a cost center. I was the field operations director for the Department of Unemployment Assistance. We had a $25 to $30 million budget, depending upon the unemployment rate at that particular time, and roughly 375 to 400 people working for me. So fiscal prudence, I do know a little about, and you know, I've undergone a number of reductions, restructurings, and whatever. I'm a veteran, okay, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Claudia and her staff for what they put on this past weekend, the Memorial Day celebration. I'm a Vietnam era veteran that allowed me to go to school on the GI Bill. I received an MBA through that process, and you guys put on a fantastic event this weekend, and I really appreciate it. And one of my other roles, I'm on the board of directors of Friends of the Senior Center, and we all know this is a senior room, and at some point we'd really like to move on and provide more resources for our senior citizens, because quite frankly, in that population is expanding. I'm director of the Hubbardston Library Road Race fundraiser for the last 18 years. This is our 19th year. There will be applications, there are applications in the library if anybody's interested. And this, quite honestly, has raised over $55,000 to support the library over the last 18 years. And this came about, quite honestly, as a result of budget cuts, similar to what we're talking about at the town level, at the state level. Quite honestly, we needed to do something, and Dennis O'Donnell, who you all know, and myself got together and with the library trustees and really did some fundraising and got this off to a good start, and we're in our 19th year. So make sure you come out or send your relatives out. The original reason, I went on the school committee for 7 years. The original reason that I went for the school committee was for some of the reasons that have been elaborated today. I didn't think it was an open process. I was concerned about the quality of education. My children graduated in 2003 and 2005. I thought they got a really good education, but there were some shortcomings in terms of quality of classes and what was available in whatever. So I said, why not do something about it, quite honestly, and try and work with the school committee to make sure that we continue to give a quality education. We've got a very open process right now. Anything I referred to tonight is on the website, Quabbin Regional School District website. We've been having meetings on the budget process since January. And we invite anybody to come to any of those meetings. It's an open process. And I'll talk a little bit about the public hearing process. There are budget challenges going forward. One of the concerns is the declining assistance from the state. Whether it's in transportation, whether it's Chapter 71 or Chapter 70, whether I'm glad to hear that there is some special ed relief being discussed, that's a killer for us. We had a 5.9% increase in our budget over the course of the last year, all right? Now that sounds, people are throwing around figures like 12, 15, 20%. The bottom line was it was 5.9%. I'm looking at the appropriation categories on the website. Anybody can take a look at them. The main drivers of this process were special education, went up a total of 20%. Tuition, the tuition to schools, such as Pat alluded to, she'd like us to take a look at in-house, maybe run some more courses in-house, do some more instructional things in-house for our special ed students. That's going to happen. We're talking about that. There's a 20% increase, 31% increase in the tuition that we're paying out. I don't think we got to a $400,000 placement, but a couple $100,000 placement, $100,000 placement. Several of those people moving into our area, we're responsible. Federal mandate to make sure that all folks are educated throughout our district. The second driver in special education was instructional support. Getting to the exact point of which you're talking about, which we talked about earlier, is having more aides hands-on next to the students who need special ed assistance in the schools. The regular education, a 4.6 increase in benefits. That's for health insurance. We all know, we look at our co-pays, our health insurance costs, they're all going up. That was what the increase was. And quite honestly, teachers are paying anywhere from 35 to 55% of their own health insurance benefits, which is actually, I think maybe it's even better in the town. The pay that it was like 20-25% that the employees would have to pay. So we have pared down costs in that manner or delayed the escalation. And tuition, right now we're seeing more and more folks go to charter schools. We talked about more and more folks going to Monty Tech. And honestly, I can almost understand that because in today's world, what you need is a really viable trade or a baseline 2 years of a technical college education to really advance. We're in a world economy right now. We're not just in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts has one of the better education systems in the country. That's why a whole lot of folks push back against Common Core. We had our own standards. Our own standards are far above those of the nation, or those of many other states in the nation. This is the public hearing PowerPoint that is on the website. We had a public hearing. Anybody want to guess how many people showed up? And we're originally talking a $36 million budget, which we pared down to $32.5. And it may even need some additional paring as we go forward if the $280,000 override doesn't pass, if 4 out of 5 towns don't vote for the override.
No one knew about it, Mark. I didn't know about it.
Really? Okay.
I talked about,
All right.
parents don't know about it.
Well, I think I went home with the kids in the school. But there were some other situations. There was a task force meeting where we did have some attendance, mainly from the folks in Barry. Some parents from Barry came to hear about what was going on. Now, you talk about, maintaining, what's the $280,000 going to do for us, right? Well, it's going to basically hold us exactly at the same level where we were for the past year in terms of a quality of education. We go to another $1 million, which if we don't pass the overrides, which is very likely, we all know that, overrides people aren't fond of overrides in our communities. Nobody wants a greater class size. Talk to some of the folks who have kids in our school system. They're very happy with the education that they're getting right now, but they don't want their children on a bus for more than an hour. They don't want schools to close. Nobody wants their schools to close. You've got a task force that's looking at 9 different options to save $1.8 million. And we're talking, Hubbardston Center School is not going to close. I mean, Dan will tell you that. It's not going to close in the next year. But the fact of the matter is, we have roughly a 57%, actually, our vacancy rate is probably over 40% in our current schools across the district. So anybody we talked about running it like a private sector, anybody who is interested in thinking private sector would say, well, you have to do some consolidation. You have to do something. And, there are some different scenarios that would actually bring us up to, closing 2, 3 schools, bring us up to a 75% capacity, which is, I think, the max that we could get to. It's envisioned that by 2025, that we could probably fit all the students in this district in the Barry campus, where the middle school and the high school is right now. So there are some serious challenges. Am I correct?
Yeah, we've discussed all that stuff, yes.
Okay. It's, I'm not making this up. So there are some serious challenges ahead. And it's not just, I don't see, when I came to the district, I said, when I came to the school committee, I looked at it, I said, there's got to be an open process. There's got to be a lot of fat. There's got to be a lot of this. In reality, we're trying to provide a quality education similar to that which Ann alludes to for the folks that are east of 495. There's somebody told me the other day that, they're spending something like $25,000 plus for education for a pupil in Cambridge. All right? Right now, we're spending, what, $12,500, I think Mr. Stoddard said? The fact of the matter is, we just need to maintain the quality education for the folks that are in our school district. It's, it's really a major challenge, and I don't see it getting any easier. I don't see a lot of assistance from the state, perhaps in a few areas. Nobody wants to see their local school closed. Nobody wants to see larger class sizes. Nobody wants to see teachers laid off when there's going to be 30 kids in a class. But we've got some serious challenges ahead, and we need a partnership. We need you folks to attend some of these meetings. If there's a hearing, you ought to come to it. If there's a vote that needs to be taken, you ought to make sure you're at that vote. You can go on the website. You can take a look at, how we're going through the process. 5, 6, 7 different meetings. There are a whole lot of different issues. We've got a consultant, a $70,000 consultant that's going to help us solve this problem, which is supposed to report back by June of 2017. Hopefully, we're condensing that date, because what we really need some relief is by a year from September. We need to maybe condense our district. The state really wants us. What the state would like us to do is really become like Quabbin-Wachusett, Quabbin-Narragansett, Quabbin-Gardner, like a school district that, quite honestly, is much bigger in nature. The only way they see us surviving is if we consolidate And instead of, how many districts, Ann, out here?
There's 58.
58, maybe down to like 20, 25, maybe even less. And I think that's where we're headed long-term. The $280,000 override is 64 cents impact on your tax rate. On the budget lines, we have a number of different, we have a number of different documents out there detailing if somebody wants to know what the superintendent makes, somebody wants to know what the administrative office makes. I think the administrative office had a 1.9% increase last year.
How about you? How much do you make, Mike?
Not much. This is all volunteer work. And I guess, to be honest with you, it's really a challenge, and it's a challenge for everybody that's involved in this process. And I'm really willing to take any questions, anything.
Just when that school was built, our kids are exactly the same age. So when that school was built, the population is exactly what it is now.
Okay.
Well, the other thing is, I did go on your website, the website today. I also went on the Wachusett website.
Mm-hmm.
And Quabbin's administrative costs are double what they are at Wachusett.
Are they really?
Yep.
Yeah, it could also be what they put into the categories. You'd have to take a look at it. You have to take a look at it by appropriation code per se, because you can play with the budget. I think we have a pretty open process. So what he's talking about is when our kids went to school, there were about 3,000 kids in his district, and right now we're talking about 2,200. And as I alluded to, 57% occupancy rate. I think it's a little over 60% in the Hubbardston Center School. I think Barry might be the highest, occupancy rate. And somebody mentioned New Braintree. Again, nobody wants to lose their local school, but we need to make some hard decisions, and parents are going to have to be involved. And if we're going to maintain a quality district, it's not the town of Hubbardston, it's not the town of Ocam, it's the Quabbin Regional School District, and we have to get to that point where we forget about the parochialism and we start really treating this as a school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
More questions? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah, I'll take a look at Wachusett, okay? I will.
Mark,
Yes.
Mark, just as a cost saver, since the schools are empty, the vacancies, like I don't know if they're in Quabbin as well, close the administrative building, move that back into the school, and then you could sell the, Barry needs a, may need a building.
Barry may need a building.
Just
something
to think about.
Actually, some towns look at, are looking, part of the job of Dan and his task force, not your task force, but the task force per se, is to take a look at what do you do with a plant like this should you decide to move these folks, the children, to Ruggles Lane. Who takes it over? Is there somebody who can move in? I mean, can it be the town administrative offices, as this gentleman alluded to?
Yeah, the Quabbin Administrative Building.
Administrative
right
building.
After the high school.
I'll tell Maureen that we'd like to do that. That'd be good.
Put her in the high school.
Let me just add one thing to this, because it's gonna, the rumors fly all around, especially when we start this consolidation. We ended up posting, the Board of Selectmen posted on our website and then Facebook as well a week and a half ago, just to state for the record, the school committee, the superintendent, none of that can close a school in Hubbardston. Recommendations can be made, but the new regional agreement that, there was a 25-year-old one that got changed as of last year, makes it so that town meeting needs to vote to close a school. And it's a specifically called one agenda item town meeting, which is that item on the table, and it's voted there, and the town has to vote to close their own school. It's the only way it happens. So just clearing that up.
And if folks are concerned about, certain line items in the budget, we have open school committee meetings. You can come and talk to us. We have public hearings, and any recommendations will be taken very seriously, as we always do.
Next up is our state representative, who will be speaking to us for a few moments.
What about the snakes in Quabbin?
Snakes are working on it.
I know you are.
So we're working on it, so it's stalled for a while anyway.
Why are they worried about it?
Because everybody that I know that is against the snakes is afraid of snakes. Is that why? Okay. Come on, you gotta have questions.
Okay.
Dan's got a question.
Well, we talked a lot tonight. I just wanted to get your answer, I guess, to it. We talked a lot about budget as usual and the effect that education has on our budget. So we had asked Ann earlier, and wanted to get your thoughts on where things are going to go relating to, I guess, just the sort of macro discussion of public school versus charter school.
So I'm not opposed to charter schools, you know, it's the issue, and I know Ann has the same issue, is I don't like charter schools taking the money from public schools.
We don't either.
Because it's hard, how do you compete with that? So if you have an underperforming public school and you're gonna put a charter school in that district, and all the kids go to the charter school, you're gonna take all the money from the public school, you can't compete with that. So, I mean, that's the issue we're all facing. So that's the part I don't like. I don't mind charter schools because I think they serve a purpose and they do a good job, but when you take all the money from the other schools to give it to them, it makes no sense.
And it's going in the wrong direction.
It is.
Why don't you just put money in the public schools and you don't need
Well,
charter
so I don't know if she talked about the Chapter 70 Review Commission that came out.
Chapter 70 came up, but lots of chapters came out.
Yeah, so, and that's what, $500 million, $500 million, they said that should be, and I know the speaker had said that he wanted to phase that in over 3 years. I don't know about the Senate side, but, I mean, this year was a little too late to work on it by the time it came out, so, and I know we've been putting more and more money in every year, and the Senate raised it over the House this year, so expect that to come up in the next few years. They talked about a 3-year phase in, you know, that $500 million, so, which would be great. Well, we'll see.
By the time it gets here, it'll be $35.
No, 500 million is a pretty good amount. It's not to every,
Yeah,
it's
but we're
different.
in the middle of the state.
Yeah,
The part
but
of the
it's,
state that doesn't exist.
but it's not, it's different. If you gotta read the report, it's a shy bit less confusing than the current formula. So not every district gets more money, some actually get less. But I think you guys, Quabbin gets more in the new. I think Ware, it stays about the same, but all my other ones, they go up, so.
I just
Can I sit? I can sit, right?
Yeah, you can sit. No, I just have a question. You know,
I've been sitting all day.
I didn't bring this up, you know, in my really short speech to make sure you got here. Sure. But the fact of the matter is, you know and Ann know that public schools of today are not the public schools of 10 or 15 years ago.
They're not.
Can you comment on that and elicit, you sort of talk about some of the problems that you hear about on a regular basis that are impacting the teachers and the administrators in public schools, even in private schools, but in public schools specifically?
I can tell you some of the issues I have. So I have a 29-year-old son and I have a 12-year-old son. I know, I don't know that. So I was always really good with math, calculus in high school, and maybe nuclear power school and all that stuff. So, but now we're doing Common Core math, and I can't do it. I can't do it the way they tell me to do it. And he's very smart. He's an honor student, and he can't understand the way they want to do it the way I show him how to do it. We're doing algebra now, so I can do equations all day long, and he's great, but I can't do it the way. And thankfully, his teacher this year says whatever way he can get it is great. So I know that's an issue. Another issue when I talk to teachers and principals is that honestly, there's sometimes parents are the issue, and I get this all the time, that my kid's an angel, would never do that, and 99% of the time the kid's not really an angel. So I know they're having problems with that, and discipline, and the opiate. But oh my God, opioid stuff takes up 50% of my time, and I'm sure it takes a lot of hands too, at least. I'm always meeting somebody.
Can I jump in on that real quick? You know, I taught high school for about 10 years in the late 80s into the 90s, when MCAS was first coming out. So I mean, obviously a big change in the last 15 or so years is because of all the testing. And that has changed, and having kids teach the test on top of that, then we're telling teachers that the evaluations of the principals that they do aren't good enough. We're going to put more things on. So, you know, the Senate, we tried to get rid of those DDMs, so those district measurements, because the idea is, you know, why are you doing, you know, test on top of test on top of test? And that's what I hear the main, not just from teachers, but from parents, because the kids are getting stressed out. And it's going from, you know, the testing in the spring, the testing in the fall, the testing here, the testing there, and it's test after test after test. And, you know, it would be one thing if Massachusetts, if we were like Mississippi, the bottom of the barrel. We're not. We're number one. We're doing something right. and let the teachers teach.
She's right, and how they tie the test scores to teacher evaluation, I don't agree with that, because you can have different kids from year to year. It should be the principals and your bosses that evaluate you. You know, you could be the best teacher in the world and get a group of kids that just don't get it, and it's not your fault, but then that draws your value. It's wrong. It shouldn't be that way. That's it. You guys were easy. Come on. This is easy.
I want to thank all of you for coming, but I want to make remarks to the people that are going to be watching this on TV, who are sitting in their lounges having a beer or a glass of wine. We have so many open positions here on our ballot. It's an absolute shame that more people, and there are a lot of bright people in this town that could be very helpful to the town, that are sitting fat and happy doing nothing. And that's not the way it's supposed to be, folks. This is the closest to representative government that you can get to a democracy, town government. And I'm going to implore all of you to get out there and fill some of these positions, write your name in, do something. I think it's sad that so many positions are open. It says something about the public involvement in the town, and it's not right. So, to you folks out there, get involved. Don't let this happen again. This is the second or third year I've seen so many vacant positions. It's not right. You're talking to a volunteer. I'm not on any official elected positions, but I'm on plenty of volunteer committees, and I'm happy to do it. I think it's part of what I should be doing, part of what you should be doing. Thank you. Remember, Channel 192, pay attention. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Donna. Dawn.
Donna.
That's all right. You just became Italian.
I just want to remind everyone that we have a great yard sale coming up the 18th and 19th of June. We have more things donated to us. We have truckloads that are all being stored in people's garages and barns, and so when we bring them out, there'll be no room in the senior center. So we'll be bringing them out probably next week so we can get everything organized. So please don't forget that we have that yard sale coming. All the proceeds goes to the senior center. All the donations people made, everything goes to the senior center. So hopefully everyone will come out, and if anybody wants to volunteer to help a little bit with that, we would appreciate that too. So thank you again for coming out and supporting this event. I appreciate that. And have a good night.
Don't forget the